Hope Sheets is having a wonderful time with his son down in Virginia. They got the big game tomorrow. So that should be good. Oh, great. And just as we get on air, Giannis is ruled out. So there goes the slate, people. It almost makes me feel like, why are we doing these morning things? What are we doing? Giannis ruled out? Come on, guys. That's going to change the entire slate for me. Giannis happens to be in all my lineups on DraftKings. So there goes the neighborhood, as they say. So we're going to have to figure out how the projections update. We'll revisit the Giannis thing. I'll talk about some other plays I like. But honestly, the initial thoughts about the Giannis situation, obviously Drew is going to be really popular. Bobby Portis is a great play, going to be really popular. Grayson Allen will be popular. Maybe Jordan Nwora. The only guy who I'm not really giving much love to is George Hill. I feel like he's getting a lot of love, and maybe Thanasis even. Like, they do have a lot of interchangeable bodies. Like Ojale will play minutes now. Nwora. I think that if whoever started would be an interesting one to go with. So my personal strategy is to avoid the first game tonight anyway. We're probably going to hear about more news, so we've got kind of an hour and a half, not just a half hour. So I would say, I mean, we're going to have to see how the projections do it, and I would love to see what their starting lineup is for the Bucks, and I'm trying to see if anyone's even released their starting lineup yet. I don't think we have one official starting lineup. Really hate that about the NBA. Why not just do the same as – I understand, like, you could get hurt in warm-up or something, but, like, give it a go warm-up time. But, like, I don't know. It just feels like we should have some idea of some team saying, hey, here's who we're starting. I mean, I don't know. But, yeah, Bobby Portis is going to be, like, basically a must for me. That could get that you know, it's weird to think of the Bucks in a game that could get ugly, but this game could get ugly. And Portis, Drew, and the weird part is you can stack this game. Like, you've got Marcus Smart on the other side, who's 5,100. You can overpay, quote marks, for Tatum, 10-1. I think it's reasonable. Robert Williams makes for a nice part of a game stack. You could get like a 4-3 in this game, and like that could take up most of your lineup, and that probably is viable. It's what I like to do often in these situations. So something worth considering. Let's see what's happening in chat. What's up, Carnes? How you doing, buddy? Yeah, the Giannis news, of course, breaks right as the show starts, so we're going to have to deal with it. So I'll tell you the other guys who I'm looking at playing on this slate that are now going to be a little bit less interesting. Will Barton was one of them. D'Angelo Russell still is one of them. Clint Capella on FanDuel especially. Lonzo Ball on FanDuel especially. D'Anthony Melton on both sites. Ricky Rubio. Cade Cunningham. Kristaps Porzingis. We don't probably need the Osman value, but I consider Chetty to be an okay play. Who else do we have? Jeremy Grant, Jared Allen. Those were the guys I had highlighted, and nothing has really changed until now, which is going to change everything. So we'll give those projections a minute to update. Like I said, I just don't think it's a good environment, the first game. Like, if you wanted to play RJ Barrett, no problem with that, especially on FanDuel. I mean, he's 5,900 over there, kind of a great price, and he's going to be really popular. But he's viable at 65. It's a really, really, really great matchup against a Charlotte team that plays really quick. Kemba going back to Charlotte is not getting any love by anybody. Anybody else find that a little bit odd? He's 5K. We know that Kemba has a floor, like a low floor, but we've seen a ceiling out of him. I mean, he can get you 40. Anyway, so it's a big. What do we do here? I don't know what. Like, yeah, this is up in the air here, guys. It's going to be hard not to play most of the. We've seen this happen before. Usually we have Middleton in there to sort of save it with Holiday, or used to be with Bledsoe. I actually won one of those tournaments by stacking up their game, because Milwaukee will still play with decent enough pace. I really personally, I'm just skipping the first game and buying myself as much extra time to run as possible. I want to find out whether Halliburton's playing would make De'Aaron Fox another really good play. There's a lot of things to speculate on right now, but I am totally fine. The one guy who I really do think is extremely viable. I mean, I mentioned that RJ Barrett and Kemba, the speculative, going back to Charlotte kind of a thing. But what about, I mean, Julius Randle should just demolish this front line, right? And at the same time, there's another on the other side. It's probably the first time all year I've said this, but I finally like Mason Plumlee, and the projections finally don't. So that's what I would say is that those would be the guys I would run. I just am probably not going to do it. I think you're losing out too much value on what we might learn in the meantime, and even getting on projection updates, which I'm trying to work on right now. So we'll figure that out. Tibbs, no, he hasn't been upset with the starters X factor. It's different. Like he's always been one of those guys. He plays the starters a million minutes, but when the bench goes off, you let him cook. That's what you do. I don't agree that it's just Tibbs not liking the starters. It's just when the bench is more effective, you're going to side with, you're going to keep playing the bench, especially when you come back the way they did in that Bucks game. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we know Giannis is out. Yes, absolutely. Anyway, so this is going to be an interesting slate that's going to have very, very condensed ownership with a lot of guys to play. I could see Jrue Holiday having a hard time tonight. I could see that whole team struggling tonight, but you're going to probably want at least $2 anyway. I think Portis is where you start. I think Jrue Holiday is where you go next. And I think after that, I'd like to see a starting lineup. But that game certainly feels stackable. Mitch Robb is going to lose some interest. I had interest in him initially earlier on today when I did my show, but I just don't see the reason why we need to play him with the other value that's opening up and with his potential value that might even be more later in the day or in the next hour and a half before that other game starts. I mean, Mitch Robb against Nwora, I guess, is kind of an interesting conversation if Nwora ends up starting. I am curious who they're going to start, though. That will be important to notice in this one because they have a lot of interchangeable forward. They have a lot. Like they're weirdly like they're not deep, but they've got guys that can play 20 minutes. Pat Connaughton is probably going to show up. The only one who I don't care to play is George Hill. But if it's Thanasis, it's going to be hard not to have some interest in Thanasis at 3,100 too. So my natural thing would be to look, hey, let's look on the other side of that game. Maybe we get a little game stack. And I think you got Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, and Robert Williams, who are all in their own good plays. We could even throw Schroeder into that mix. And I think it makes for a nice game stack. It's not the pace you want, but I was planning on doing the Cleveland Detroit one, which again, I really like Cleveland to cover the spread. So maybe I shouldn't be that high and it's a low scoring total, but everybody just feels mispriced in that game. Especially Ricky Rubio. And if Ricky Rubio, people don't want to play him at 35 or 40% like he should be because he's not starting, that's just a mistake. And I think Cade Cunningham is a phenomenal play until he's 7K. So that's where I'm at. It is Westbrook's birthday, my boy's birthday, playing at home here in LA too, against a really bad defense. You got a nice little double narrative there with D'Angelo Russell on the run back. That's how I built my first FanDuel lineup. If you guys were true DFS members, you would have seen that. My first lineups though were Russell Westbrook and D'Angelo Russell. So both the Russells. Pat Con going home. Okay. You maybe make an argument there, but I don't know if that's really I don't know how much that means to the coaching staff of the Bucks. And Connaughton is just, he can always get there, but I actually think that Giannis being out maybe hurts him a little bit. They like to play him with Giannis. Not hurts him, but doesn't necessarily help him as much as it does maybe some of these other guys. And I think Jrue Holiday and Bobby Portis are 1 and 1A. And then what do we want to do with whether it be Nwora or Thanasis who's starting? So let's hopefully get a starting lineup. I'll be in Discord. I'm probably going to get out of here at 6:30 Eastern. But if we don't have it by then, I'll be in Discord and be happy to answer any questions, talk about any possibilities. I don't have that many lineups I'm running tonight. Any love for Lillard tonight? Nope. It's fine. There's a bunch of expensive guys tonight. So Lillard is definitely near the bottom of that list for me. He's fine. He makes a lot of sense on FanDuel. I like him on FanDuel at 8,500. It's too cheap. It's weird that we keep talking about Lillard though every day, and we should start recognizing the guy hasn't put up 50 fantasy points in a game this season, and we need 60 out of him. He will at some point, but why are we continuing to bet on this? Like, it just seems kind of, at this point, it seems like it's kind of our being foolish by playing him on DraftKings. But on FanDuel, I think it's very reasonable because 45 fantasy points or 50 or getting, whatever that number that he's sort of around, that's fine for 8,500. That's not fine for 9,800 with tons of other spend ups. So no love for Lillard for me. Always could go off, always could come back to bite you, but it hasn't happened yet. There would have been 0 times would it have been correct to play Lillard on DraftKings this year so far. Not once would it have made sense. And yeah, Houston doesn't play defense, but why does that mean that Lillard needs to take over exactly? I don't see it. It's always a possibility with him. It's just a matter of any shooter can get hot. It's like the Steph thing. That why wouldn't Steph is more expensive obviously right now for good reason because he's at least flashed a ceiling. Not very much, by the way, he hasn't. But if you want to do something and get a guy at low ownership, I would take a shot with Steph and Levine and in a back and forth, and maybe Lonzo too. You can even use Caruso for value. I know people are talking about Tony Bradley. I'm not 100% sure what they do with Tony Bradley, but they don't really have another option to play big, but they don't need to play big. So it's kind of a tricky situation to try and assess. Elise Johnson could easily get the minutes. It's just that's a tough one with that game being later. But again, it just builds to my same strategy: delay. That's what I think you have to try and do. But to answer the Westbrook thing, I do like Westbrook, but I prefer him on. I'm not going to play him on DraftKings. I don't think at 11-2, although it's viable. More viable than probably Lillard based on what's happened so far this year. Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting for the things to update right now for the Bucks, but I would really like a Bucks starting lineup. And I just think the smartest thing for right now, unless you're going to play a shot on Kemba or Randall or Barrett, the guys we mentioned, or maybe you do like Plumlee or Mitch Rob, which are fine. I just think there's better plays coming. That is a really good pace game. Is it weird that no one's going to play Kemba though? Like, that's the only one I can't quite get my head around. Like maybe that's not such a bad play. I'm going to consider it anyway. All right, let's talk about some other stuff. Any other questions? Yeah, Levine's looking like 20% owned, but you have no Vooch. You know what I mean? Like that's a huge uptick for those guys and a huge up-paced matchup against the Warriors who play fast. So Levine is a really solid play in my opinion, as is DeRozan, as is Lonzo, as is Caruso, to be honest with you. All 4 of those guys are really, really strong plays. And then the Tony Bradley question mark. You could always do that and then shift it to better value later in the day if that's what you want to do. I think that's probably where I would lean. I don't think there's any guarantee Tony Bradley plays 20 minutes. And even right now, he's only projected to play 21 minutes, so he has to get there in a hurry, which he can do. I've seen him do that before. I've also seen him dud completely. We saw it with Philly last year, maybe the year before last, and the Jazz before that. All right. But yeah, I think that there is merit to just trying to postpone. I just think that it's going to be really hard to not play a lot of these Milwaukee guys once these projections get updated. You're going to see everybody flock over to this Milwaukee stuff. How can we not have? I mean, I know he was questionable, but I thought that he was like I was under the impression that he was going to go. Yeah, Thanasis is the one that's popping off, but that's because he's projected to be starting. Now, if he's not starting, or even if he is, you can play Jordan Nwora, I think, instead at much, much, much lower ownership. And I think Nwora is a really, really viable play. Connaughton is fine. I really like this Nwora kid, man. Maybe it's a little bit too blinded by just actually watching him play, and he looks good when he does play. But they don't, it's weird against Boston because you kind of need to play a little big. So you'd think that, Portis with one of these other bigger guys, which could be Thanasis, but it could be Nwora, will get a lot of minutes. And Semi Ojeleye revenge. There's your revenge. What if that wins the slate tonight? Wouldn't that be fitting for the way the season's going? Semi Ojeleye revenge ends up taking it down. Semi Ojeleye had 25 fantasy points the other night in that game. That was crazy. I've never seen him. I mean, he made all of his shots including 3 threes, but that was I'm sort of joking about the Ojeleye. I would not play Ojeleye. But Nwora and Thanasis are going to both be viable. I'd love to see who's starting there. I really like Porzingis on DK to answer Project Mayhem's question. I really do like the I really think it's a really solid play, but I don't think it's like a must or anything like that. And he's going to have ownership, so you can sort of go either way on it. That's what I did. I do have him currently in a build. Yeah, you're K9 Bronco. I just said that exact thing, so you must have missed the very beginning. But yeah, no problem, buddy. But yeah, I love the Russell and Russell. Westbrook and Russell. Russell Westbrook and D'Angelo Russell. No, D'Angelo Russell is not a good basketball player, but you don't think going back to Golden State after they got rid of him that he's going to take a bunch of shots? He always does this. I had one of my biggest DFS nights. I won like 175,000 one night. it was D'Angelo Russell playing and Clarkson was starting. I can't remember. Must have been 2 years ago. But D'Angelo Russell and Clarkson both took their career highs in shots because they were the ones fighting for the position with the Lakers. And they were still trying to show up each other. And it was like the perfect thing. And they were both like 1% and a half a percent. Like it was the most incredible thing. They both put up like 65 each or something like that. And they were like 6K at the time. I was like, this is incredible. That's when I loved DFS. But I'm telling you right now, it's not a guarantee that Russell goes in there and shoots the ball 100 times. But that is something I've had a pretty good track record on, is getting guys motivationally right. And if he shoots, anybody who shoots the ball 20 plus times is going to be interesting. I'm sorry, going back to LA, not to Golden State. I don't know why I said Golden State, but going back to LA, back to the Lakers, who also didn't want him. I do think he'll try to do his best to get 20 to 30 shots up. He probably outshoots Cat yet again, which I don't really understand. Anyway, okay, so Ingram is out officially. Let's see. This looks like that. Steve L is usually, pretty right on this stuff, and most of our guys are. I don't have the Ingram out news yet, but maybe I just haven't gotten it yet. So if Ingram is out, look, there's another great spend up right there. That's a dangerous game that could easily get out of hand, because as much as Brooklyn doesn't scare me, the Pelicans have just been terrible, like terrible. But the guy who hasn't been terrible is Joe Val. Joe Val feels like a really reasonable spend at 9,300. I feel like 50 is waiting for him here. As long as this game stays close, we have him against an old Brooklyn team with nobody with the size to even come close to matching up with him. I think he could go nuts in that game. So I actually like Joe Val a lot now. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, completely viable. Josh Hart, viable. Garrett Temple, very viable if Najee Marshall is out also. We need to know that. Here I have Ingram. But you need probably to have Najee Marshall out as well to make Temple like really an awesome play instead of just a good play. Lock in that 35 minutes. J-Val Nah chasing. I'm all in. What do you think? I just said, maybe you said that question before. I like it. I don't think it's like a dream. I mean, one thing is Brooklyn is not playing this lightning quick basketball. New Orleans does. But Brooklyn has been like slow with old man Harden running the point. Yeah, I think you could stack. I mean, you can stack that game and then just use the value for Milwaukee. I think that's kind of interesting. I do like Lamar. I think Lamarcus Aldridge, like, by the way, in terms of real basketball, he's the only net other than, he and Durant are the only nets that I've actually been impressed with this whole season. He's looked awesome. He's looked like a really good basketball player, like really, really good. And yeah, he could see, he's not going to get the minute upside, but he can put up 30 fantasy points in 20 minutes easily. He does. He keeps doing it. Yeah, I kind of could get behind that actually. DeJounte Murray dropped 52. So here's my question to you. If you like the DeJounte Murray against Dallas tonight, I love DeJounte Murray as a player, but 52 is what he'd have to be at. Like he'd have that's the minimum of what you'd want for him at 9,400, right? So you just get into the conversation of who's the better play. I personally slightly prefer Joe Val now, but I'm fine with it. You can absolutely go ahead and play DeJounte Murray against a team that he's done really well against. I have no problem with that. Yeah, I think he's another reasonable spend. We have a lot of spend ups that are going to be low owned, and I would probably side with Joe Val, but I definitely can get behind the DeJounte Murray. Just not the guy I'm looking at personally as much. But I get it. Like again, you're making a good point. Like if he keeps going off against the team, and also he's kind of going off in general. That's 50 sort of seems like where he's at every night. But we'll have to see. Is De'Aaron Fox maybe a better play at 7,900 if there's no Halliburton? I think so. Or it's 8,400 on DraftKings, 7,900 on FanDuel. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'm going to get out of here in a few minutes. So ask your questions. I'm ready to answer them for you. I'm ready to get this going, and I'm ready to make some money today. So we need to get some lineups out NBA, because without the lineups, it's going to be hard for me to speculate, especially on that Milwaukee situation. We do have a Knicks lineup for what it's worth. That's the only lineup been released so far. So that's what's that. Who do I like at center 78? You just nailed it. So you right at 7,800, Jared Allen. Don't even need to look. I do like Jared Allen quite a bit all the time, and I like him tonight. One really interesting play in that game is Isaiah Stewart. The problem is everybody sort of caught on to it. They're going to have to play big, and early in the day he wasn't projecting for anything, and then all of a sudden everybody sort of caught on. But I do like Isaiah Stewart on the other side, and I really like Jared Allen. He should just this could be like a 15 and 25 game for him. Like, and by the way, Mobley is viable as well. So, but I do like Jared Allen at 7,800. Let's see, Steven Adams likely to play. So we don't have Jaren Jackson Jr. being as good of a play as I thought he was going to be. And by the way, Steven Adams is completely viable at 4,800. Probably not going to do it myself, but I definitely don't feel against it. And by the way, another guy, instead of what I would encourage people to do is I'm fine with Mitch Robb, but I don't like playing that first game. I would rather play JaVale McGee and sit and wait and see if other value opens up. JaVale McGee, has been pretty solid in this. He can put up 25 to 30. He can actually get to higher if especially in an up-tempo game like this against Memphis. And it's been Kaminsky going off lately, but I think JaVale McGee is very viable. And that's what I would probably do instead of playing the Mitch Robb early in the first game. If Semi starts, is he in play? Not for me, he's not. Nobody's lower producer than Semi, basically. And he's, you look at his last time, the only time he put up 25 fantasy points, I mean, he made every shot he took. He made all of his threes. And I'm just not going to – I just think there's so much better value out there than Semi. But if he does play 30 – anybody who plays 30 minutes at minimum cost, I can't tell you're making a mistake. I just think that there's other guys. I'd rather Thanasis, who's more active while he's on the court, doesn't need to make shots. His best game this year, he was 5 for 15 from the floor. He can get steals. He can get blocks. He can do a lot of different things. Anyway, all right. Any other questions before we get out of here? Let's see. I don't think there's anything else. I'm going to double check the projections. I'm going to double check my starting lineups page. And I'm going to see if there's anything else that I should highlight that maybe I didn't talk about. These NBA slates are just, man, they'll drive you wild. Wow. Yeah. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, I'm probably going to get out of here. By the way, I just want to emphasize one more time that I do like Evan Mobley tonight. I didn't really stay on that one as long as I should have. And I know I talked on the Lillard thing. I think it's a mistake. Well, not a mistake. I just think there's better plays. But at some point, Lillard is going to break a slate. It's just there's so many guys out there that you could choose between. It's just hard to see him being like the best spend up. Best FanDuel center tonight. I really like Capella on FanDuel. That would probably be my number one center. I'm going to double check and see everybody else who else is showing up for me. Let's see. It's really a price point thing with Capella. Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis could put up like 60 tonight, guys. This could really happen. I like Robert Williams. I like Capella. Kristaps, you can use a center. Oh, Joe Val. Love Joe Val. 8,600. Will Barton, you got to remember, though, the last game, when that was no Jokic in there, it's going to be different with Jokic and paying 6,900 for him. He's fine. Will Barton. Boy, I really was hoping the cut line would get to +2, and it's not going to happen. I had one guy bogey the 18th, that French guy, Barjon, that Sheets and I talked about, and otherwise I would have had a nice-looking little 6-6 in the single entry and the big one. Kokrak with being my highest player. Kokrak is just on fire today, 5 under through 9. All right. How much do you factor game stacking in NBA? That's a really general, broad question. It really depends on the game, the type, the price, the stack, the pace of play. It has to be. You don't need to do it ever, but generally it's good to if you're going to allocate 11K to a guy. It totally depends on the slate. Can't answer that question. If you want to. I don't know how to answer that question. I've had that come up in every coaching session I've ever done for like NBA, and I still don't have there's no real way to answer, because it's like, what percentage of this should I have? And I'm like, no, it's all slate dependent. Everything is slate dependent. I think it's a real factor when you're going to play like 3 or 4 guys from one side, not to bring somebody back from the other side, because you're missing out. I mean, one thing to keep in mind is 5% of games go into overtime, basically. And if you get that's 1 in 20, obviously, but you're playing for the ultimate upside. So not just the overtime, but the down the stretch back and forth. You know what I mean? So it's really a tough one to answer, but it is viable. Like that's why if I keep saying if I'm going to play like $3 or $4, then I want to run it back with somebody on the other side, at least one guy. I actually think you could argue for that being the best game stack because I think Tatum is reasonable at 10-1 with no Jaylen Brown. I think that Marcus Smart at 5,100 is reasonable. The only thing I'm going to wonder to myself if Kemba goes off for like 50 fantasy points, I'm going to feel like an idiot because there is this instinct I had to, and I usually try to trust my instincts that Kemba was like the sneaky guy to play here. The question is, would they play him with Derrick Rose at the same time? That's really the way he would hit his ceiling, or just getting really hot. I don't know if they would, but he can certainly get you 40, and it's interesting with him going back to Charlotte. No, cut line is +1 right now. I was hoping to go to +2. That's what I was saying. All right, we have more news coming in. Najee Marshall is in, so that's a little bit of a bump down to guys like Josh Hart and Garrett Temple, even though they're still viable. Just a little bump down to them. All right. With that said, guys, good luck to everybody out there. Love y'all. Appreciate everything. You guys try out the little original prehistoric version of our builder, but we have more going on that's being built behind the scenes. That's actually we could have something that's actually fairly like decently usable in the near future. And that one is already the optimizer seems to win every night with that one. So just as one, if you do one lineup, we're going to be able to do 150 again soon. So that's really cool. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you get out of here. You guys are awesome. Good luck to you all. I'll see you guys soon.